Are you tired of living paycheck to paycheck and you're looking for ways to establish financial freedom instead? Well, you're in the right place, because what we're going to do today is we're going to interview none other than Garrett Gunderson on this topic. My name is Darius.
And I'm Carmen, and I'm thrilled. I'm just going to put the microphone up, Garrett. Just go. Just hit him with it, because we've been talking about this all day today. And I feel like we've alluded to so many conversations around mindset and around this just rat race that people continue to live in. Mm-hmm. So I'm just curious to know what you think about it, sir. I already know what you do, what you think about it. So I just want you to hit our audience with them gems, Garrett. Just come with it.
Well, the system is set up for people to live paycheck to paycheck. It's just the way that the finance has been taught. Because if you think about it, we actually place a bigger burden on ourselves to try to create a retirement plan that makes it even worse. So we're trying to get out of a trap that we're actually getting deeper in. Because the thought of retirement is usually, hey, you got to save 10% of your income. And the way that you do that is by tightening the belt, by reducing, delaying, scrimping, sacrificing. And so it actually, now you have 90% to live on because you're trying to save that 10%, but it might even be hard to get the 10% because we have unexpected surprises. Everybody's in store for financial surprises in our life. And when we're not prepared, because we're not well educated in this in school, and even if they tried, they would probly fail. So
you say well educated? Is there
we're not
education?
Yeah.
Okay. We went to different schools
because here's the thing: what if teachers taught finance? It would be problematic. Mm-hmm. I know, because when I was in college, I was taking 2 classes the same semester: a personal finance class, and a corporate finance class. And this is where it was so enlightening to me and alarming at the same time and frustrating. And it's what drove me to get in the financial space. I actually got in at 19 years old, and personal finance class was all about this accumulation mindset. It was like, there's not enough to go around. You got to set money aside. You got to pay off all your loans. And then one day, someday, when you're super old, you can finally enjoy life. Mm-hmm. And that was in the personal finance book. Then I'm taking corporate finance. Corporate finance was radically different, actually the complete opposite. And so I was even taking economics class that same semester. So it was like corporate finance and economics was pretty related to each other, and personal finance was radically opposed to it. Mm-hmm. And so when people get into personal finance, they think, okay, I'm going to save this money. I'm going to delay my life for 30 years. It takes money to make money, so I got to save that. I got to take risk to get the return, so I'm not going to watch this volatility, and it's going to make me feel bad that I worked so hard for my money and it's not working how I thought it was going to, and I'm supposed to wait for the long haul. Mm-hmm. And so this pressure of trying to save that money, I've watched people where they've got double-digit interest rates and they're still funding a retirement plan.
Yeah.
Because that's what personal finance would teach is, hey, no matter what, you got to automate your savings. But the first problem is they've collapsed the word saving and investing. So people are automating their investing and neglecting their savings.
Mm-hmm. So glad you brought that point up.
So it's like when you're putting money in a 401k, that's investing.
Yes.
It's not saving. Yeah. It's not really liquid. Otherwise, there's penalties. Mm-hmm. It's usually in mutual funds, which are volatile. They go up and down. And so people all the time don't have 6 months of expenses set aside. So they're one financial surprise away from invading that money or feeling massive financial stress that ends up harming their health and actually creates a lack of confidence because how am I ever going to get out of this? I guess I'll just work harder.
Yeah.
And then what happens is because they work so hard, they finally you know what? I need a break. So I need to take a vacation. They spend too much on the vacation because they are so tired. And then it's kind of a setback that they come back to. And part of why we get stuck in paycheck to paycheck is because generations ahead of us say, you've got to get a job. Mm-hmm. And people circumvent finding the career or business that would really speak to them and be something they could dedicate their lives to just for the name of benefits and a paycheck. Mm-hmm. So now we get in that paycheck, and here's the problem.
Here we go. He's getting warmed up, folks.
Even if you start making a bunch of money, we have lifestyle creep that comes in. Mm-hmm. Because, there's people that go, hey, I'm a doctor, so I got to live the life of a doctor. And yet they have doctor wages, which are actually pretty low today.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
General physician's income has gone down over time, not up.
Yeah.
but student loans have exponentially increased.
Yeah.
So now they've got to make a payment on that student loan, go through a residency where they're getting paid next to nothing, working tirelessly, which creates massive amounts of stress on their marriage if they're married, or there's not really a lot left over to have quality of life. And so this paycheck to paycheck notion is because we are being pushed, and this is why you see really young generations kind of like going and railing against it to the point where they're actually not making any money or not making enough money, because they're like, I don't want to end up just being miserable living paycheck to paycheck. So there is a middle path.
Yeah.
Right.
So the middle path comes from, we have to identify who we are, how we want to contribute, and if we don't have upside potential. See, because not everybody's built to be an entrepreneur. But like, 'cause sometimes people would come to me, I've owned several businesses, and they'll say, I want to be a partner. I'm like, well, if you're a partner, then you have to have a capital call. You have to contribute money. If we have a cash flow issue, you're not going to get paid during that time. And if there's any crazy thing that happens, like a lawsuit, you're on the hook for that too. They're like, I don't want that. What they want is upside potential without the downside. And so the first question that's super helpful is, how do you contribute to the bottom line of the company you work with? And if you don't know that answer, you're not irreplaceable. And so you're going to be in a situation where you feel beholden to the company, and you might be subject to being cut in a time where the economics don't make sense because there's a downturn. And so it's a lot of pressure. But if you could have a different conversation with whoever you're employed by and say, what if I could find ways to save the company money or earn the company money? Could I get a percentage of that? Can I be rewarded for that? It's a conversation that people don't have because they're afraid to have it. Because most of us, if we're living paycheck to paycheck, don't want the accountability that's required for upside. Because then we would know where we really stand.
Yeah.
And so paycheck to paycheck comes from really like a socialistic type of system, like time and effort. Time and effort came from the Industrial Revolution, where people worked in assembly lines and they put in their time, and it was very mundane activities. Yet we had this revolution where we went into more like an intellectual place where it wasn't about brawn, it was about brains.
Yes.
Yet so much of us are indoctrinated in the system of brawn, because that's what's handed down from earlier generations, that we're playing in a game that no longer exists.
Even our education system.
It's obsolete, everything.
Look, John Dewey created the education system as we know it. And his philosophy was, we need 80% of the population to just be workers.
Well.
17%, like they're going to be, out there trying different things, and, we need to convince them to still be in that system. And 3% are going to be the renegades that are out there, and they're the entrepreneurs. And so a lot of the education is teaching people, hey, if I get a degree, I get a higher pay. If I get an advanced degree, I get more pay. And here's the thing, it's not education, it's indoctrination.
Ooh.
So we grew up, back in the day where it was like, if you're an attorney, you're going to get higher pay. If you're a doctor, you get higher pay. And there's a prestige to getting those additional things. But now we're in a world where I go, hey, while people were out there doing that, there's kids that are starting a business, doing things online. Like, because back in the day, if you were 10 years old, how are you going to make money?
Yeah.
Right.
You're mowing lawns, you're pulling weeds.
Mm-hmm.
There's 10-year-olds that are making millions of dollars because they can actually put content out on video.
Yep.
And yet they still have the fear of an earlier generation telling them, no, you've got to get a job to be responsible. And if you're responsible, you fund your retirement plan.
Right.
Indoctrination.
Pay off your loan, fund your retirement plan, be a good boy or girl, and get those benefits. And I know so many people that say, I don't like the job, but it has good benefits. Guess what? We give up our soul and our purpose for benefits that aren't even that valuable.
All day long.
Because, I looked at this article, it was on Yahoo Finance, and it was like, hey, here's how you become a 401k millionaire. And what the end thing was, those who put the most money in and start early end up with millions of dollars in it. Yet it was like so few, it was like 1% of people actually had $1 million in a retirement plan. Mm-hmm. Now imagine if we went back to 1980 and we interviewed someone and we were like, hey, what's a good amount of money to have in a retirement plan? What do you think people in 1980 would say?
They probably
Half a
wouldn't.
million?
They probably wouldn't give you a number because it wasn't there pensions then.
Yeah, there was pensions. And the reason that pensions went away is because the responsibility of a pension for a company bankrupted the companies.
Yeah, they didn't want to take the risk.
And here's the dirty little secret about it. It's because the companies invested the money in volatile things like mutual fund type things and stock things that have this problem called disinvesting. So when the people get to the place where they're going to take the pension, the company is now obligated to pay the pension in times when the market's not cooperating and going down, which starts to kill the account. And states like California had to completely revamp their system because there was more money going towards, like in Stockton, California, there was more money going towards paying for pensions for government workers than there was going to actual government workers' salaries at one time. And so what happened was people were living in California while they worked and then retiring to other places that were cheaper. And so Stockton, California got to a place where they would not send a cop out to anything unless the crime was in progress. Because they were obligated to these pensions and they didn't have the funding for it because the market didn't cooperate. And so they had to finally change the pension rules. Now, big corporations, when the markets were great in the 90s, were like, we can handle it. But as soon as there was negative years, it destroyed the pensions, which then made the companies go into bankruptcy. And these people living paycheck to paycheck, being promised a pension, didn't get the pensions in the private world. Now, they got it in public service if they were teachers, but in the private world, there was reorganization and bankruptcy. So there's these people that were like pilots that didn't love being pilots. They're like, at least I get my pension. They got their pensions cut in half. So they did something because they thought it would be a good wage or salary because that somehow became status of if you've got degrees or higher income, that was going to mean something, but higher income came with higher expectations of lifestyle that didn't lead to like any financial freedom. And so the faulty system is that it's all about how much you can save versus how much cash flow you can create. That's the shift. We have to create cash flow with our assets to cover our expenses, to have financial independence. And if we're waiting for 30 years for financial independence to show up, we have no control over our choice because it's trapped into something that's penalized if you invade it. So even if you get a high salary, how are you going to replace that salary?
Right.
95% of people in America, when they turn 65, are not financially independent. That's including their Social Security.
Yeah.
That's including their retirement plans. Because here's the deal. Today, if you have $500,000, which would have been probably 50% of people in 1980 would have said $500,000 for their retirement. Probably 25% said 250 grand, and 25% said $1 million or more because that seemed like such an astronomical number.
Yeah.
Not accounting for inflation,
Yeah.
not accounting for taxation, and not accounting for interest rate fluctuation. So they're in financial bondage in retirement to three factors they don't control. They're basically saying, if interest rates cooperate, things will be okay. If it don't, they're not. And the 4% rule, are you kidding me? Okay, so you have $1 million in your retirement plan and you can only take 4%. Because if you take more than 4%, you risk running out of money before you die.
Screwed, yep.
Like, what a faulty system. And here's what it really comes down to. Because we've taught people not to be responsible. It's the company's job. It's the government's job. I don't have the time to create cash flow. I'm not smart enough to create cash flow. This is the messaging that people buy into and believe because they're like, well, I'm not an Ivy League educated person that knows how to run a hedge fund, so I guess I'm not good with money. No, here's the deal. If we just plug financial leaks, you're going to have 10% or more of your overall income show up in a plan that could then grow and beat any rate of return they would get on any investment. But we have to radically shift and say, what if I'm responsible for investing in myself? It's not my company's job.
Oof.
What if investing in myself doesn't just come from a classroom, but it comes from learning how to write and to communicate and to market and to sell and to learn skills that really matter that you don't get in school? Because it's the school of hard knocks. It's the school of, and a lot of people feel like, okay, now I got my college education. I'm done paying for education. I made a choice in college. I was like, when I get out of college, I'm going to spend more than I paid for all 4 years of college every single year because it's important for me to increase my skill sets. I wasn't a good writer when I first started writing. I went to courses. I bought books. I learned to write. I was a horrifically bad speaker the first time I spoke.
You're supposed to be.
It was embarrassing. It was recorded. We watched it. It was cringeworthy. But I didn't stop. I hired speaking coaches. Mm-hmm. I started practice. So, like, our skill sets have to continually expand. And here's the secret. We can exponentially outpace inflation if we invest in our skills.
Come on, Garrett.
But if we expect that, hey, I'm going to get this job, and why isn't my employer raising how much I'm getting paid? Well, here's the deal. If you increase your skill set, you'll be recruited by others. You can go somewhere else, and they're going to keep you because you're adding to the bottom line. So this paycheck to paycheck thing comes from being asleep. Mm-hmm. It comes from trading time for money. It comes from saving money instead of and creating cash flow with money. It comes from not transferring risk and just hoping for the best and financial surprises confiscated along the way. But it's not the news that people want to hear. It comes from responsibility.
There it is.
No one is going to care more about your money or your career more than you. And if you expect someone to do it for you, you're a communist.
Oh my gosh, Garrett. I literally, we were just joking, like before we started recording, I was like, we're just going to introduce the topic and we're just going to let Garrett go.
Yeah.
Because that boy get hyped, man. When he gets hyped, I get hyped.
And you know, as we were talking, we got so excited about it, we didn't even introduce Garrett properly.
Did we?
No, because we've been doing other videos, and we didn't say Garrett was a New York Times bestseller. We didn't say he's been in finance for 30 years. We didn't
sold
say that
an
he's
Inc. 500 company.
Yeah, Inc. 500 company. None of that stuff. So what we're gonna have to do is put this at the beginning.
And the thing is, I don't fit the bill for everything that is being taught of success. Like, you don't think, oh yeah, you know the way to success is you grow your hair long. Mm-hmm. You know the way to success is to grow up in a coal mining town and be a fourth generation coal mining, family. Like, these are not the ingredients, but the thing is, I learned early on that I could invest in my skills because I started a business when I was 15 years old. I was playing sports, and my dad and mom were really supportive of that, but I also wanted to earn my own money. And getting a job interfered with being in sports, and my mom had really high standards for what we got with grades. Mm-hmm. Like it was, you need to be 4.0, 3.9's probably fine. Like 1A minus, that's okay. And so how was I going to do that? Well, my dad was a coal miner, and there was these surface vehicles for the mine, and when the bosses came into town, he'd clean the vehicles. I'm like, well, I started helping him clean them. My mom worked at a credit union. They repossessed vehicles, and they paid a lot of money to have those vehicles cleaned so they could sell them for a decent price. So I said, well, I could do that. So I started cleaning those vehicles, started my business. But here's what happened. The community came to my aid. My mom worked with this woman, Patty, that, did the accounting for the school district. And she said, well, let me teach you about income statements and balance sheets. So I learned about that when I was 16 years old, because I was out there earning money with this business. And then one of my teachers, Terry Tubbs, she was like, you know what? You should go compete on this business. There's business competitions, and you could, if you win money. And what would it do? What would you have to do in your business to be a better business? And she helped me contract to get, garbage bags with my logos on it to go in the car, and air fresheners that she would stay after school and help me spray them with the scent and seal them up in the bags. And, and then she scheduled me for these competitions, which taught me how to speak a little bit, because now I'm speaking to a panel of judges, and I was young, but I started to learn. And so if we just think going to school and getting good grades, I think we're past, we know that that's not going to get us where we want to go. And a lot of companies don't even require a lot of that. I get, if you're going to be a doctor, yes, very required. If you're going to be a lawyer, that's required. But there's so much opportunity in today's economy because the internet came about.
Right.
And so there's so much opportunity that you can have where you can reach people. And as long as you learn this thing, living paycheck to paycheck, trading time for money, is very limited. But being the consummate value creator, where you're always saying, what can I do to increase the value I create so I could serve more people or solve bigger problems and add more value? Money follows value. But again, when I want to be an entrepreneur, while I was in school, it was fine because I was in school and I was in finance. And so, yeah, that's cute. That's cool. And then when it was time to graduate, You know, it's like, well, what, are you going to get a real job? Like that was the conversation.
Yeah.
Right.
I get it because, you know, my great grandfather came over from Italy because he couldn't earn enough money to put food on the table. He was separated from his family for 7 years before he earned enough money to get out of living in a tent and actually have a home, and meets his daughter for the first time at 7 years old, right? Separated for 7 years. So that creates a lot of scarcity. Like, oh, you got to hold on to what you got.
Yeah.
I mean, they had the first dollar they ever earned, you know, they made all their own everything, you know, and so it seems scary to get paid for your production.
Yeah.
It seems safe to be paid for your effort. But effort is the first thing to lose in a tight economy. Production is the only thing that prevails.
And I think people can also still relate to that, because you can be in the same household and still don't really be with that person if you're always working. Because I think about my dad. He would work 12 hours a day, not taking into consideration the time it take to prepare to go to work and the time it took to get home. We were living in the same house, but I only spent like an hour with him for the longest. So I think to that point, like, we still need to think about the power of the habit and the power of ourselves and the value that we create, so that we can spend the time adding value to ourselves.
Well, I was going to say, sorry, real quick, to interject, this made me think about the conversation we were having earlier about legacy. So, right, legacy isn't always just about like the trust and the life insurance policies, right? Mm-hmm. Legacy is about what we do on a daily basis to instill into our children.
Right.
And so, like you said, what you saw with your dad was just, you know, the working time, trading time for money.
Right.
And you had a choice where you said, hey, am I going to continue to do that, or am I going to do something different? And that's why you decided, I'm going to do something different. And it's just another reminder of like what we're doing with our family, of just like teaching value. How do you create value? Instead of like, you said, God, what did you say, Garrett? You said production prevails. Mm-hmm. You like your double P's there? Production prevails.
No, I'm going to alliterate.
Yeah, exactly. As soon as you said it, I was like, double P's, there we go. Yeah. And effort, what did you say? Effort. Do you remember it?
Effort's like the first thing
that
gets eliminated.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Effort.
It's like, hey, your effort doesn't matter here. Mm-hmm. When it comes to paying bills, when it comes to acquiring clients, when it comes to like, because money follows value. So money doesn't follow time.
I'm just mind blown over here.
Money doesn't necessarily follow effort. Money follows value. And it might require time and effort to create value. But here's the thing. If we focus on the time and effort, we lose a sense of ourselves, because if I do something that I don't enjoy to get a paycheck, I'm going to lose my energy, which is going to create a layer of scarcity and a mindset of limitation, because I'm like, I got to do that again. I don't want to do that, but I do it because I got to pay the bills.
Because of benefits.
And I got to get that next paycheck, and I can't lose my benefits. And so we have so many people disengaged in their work because they didn't take the time to face their insecurities.
Ooh.
Like, you know, like one of the things that I do that I think most people think is the scariest thing that you could do is stand-up comedy. Mm-hmm. And when I decided I'm going to do a stand-up, you know, I'm going to go to an open mic, I'm going to schedule it, I'm going to do it, I'm going to call one person that I know I can work with that will hold me accountable to what I say I'm going to do, instead of just keeping it to myself. And I remember that night, it was a Wednesday night open mic. I invited 6 rows of friends. And I was just sitting there. I probably peed 6 times before I went up there because it's like so nervous. I was like, maybe I shouldn't do this. But then I got up on stage. I did 4 minutes and 20 seconds of comedy. 2 people high-fived me on the way out. And we went to dinner, and it was elation because I faced that insecurity. Mm-hmm. I got up on that stage. The first speech I gave at 15 years old at Students in Free Enterprise at Southern Utah University, in front of 5 people on a panel, these judges. I was so nervous. Again, went to pee 80 times like before I got up there. And then I won $500 as a 15-year-old for 3rd place. And it wasn't so scary. I developed the skill set. So parents, challenge your kids to get out of their comfort zone early on. Mm-hmm. The stakes are low. I'm 15. If I lose, it'll hurt my feelings. But the bills are being paid. People wait too long to dream. They give up on their dream, and now they feel the pressure of, I've got kids, I've got bills, I've got debt, and I've got to do the work instead of I get to do the work. Mm-hmm. And going from got to get is everything.
Mindset shift.
Right? Yeah. And so, you know, look, it's amazing what people can accomplish if they dream. Now, if you dream and you don't take action, that's fairy tale. But if you dream and you take action, like I was like, okay, I'm gonna do a comedy special. All right, that's the next level, right? I'm gonna do a comedy special. And I was like, I live in Salt Lake City. How am I gonna end up making this happen? But the fact that I was willing to tell people about it, then I started, I remember that night, I walk out and it's in an auditorium with 800 people. And so that's intimidating for a comedian. Sometimes it was for me, for my first time to be in a round. So I'm in the center and there's people all around me. I had the time of my life that night. It was so fun. 12, 13 minutes. And then there was a guy from Hollywood who was like, that was phenomenal. Like, I think you got what it takes. See, I think that there's a little bit of magic in dreaming and taking action, because I feel like the universe comes to your aid. Doesn't mean that they don't throw some roadblocks, because you got to overcome those. And here's the thing. If your vision is greater than your problem, you'll persevere. But it requires dealing with nerves. It requires dealing with insecurity. It requires declaring something that you don't know how to do. That's the magic. I don't know how to do it, but I'm going to declare that I'm committed to it. When I wrote Killing Sacred Cows, it was self-published. And I'm at an event. I'm speaking. There's 85 people there. And they bring in the book at lunch. I was like, oh my God, this is my book. And I held it in my hands. I was so excited. So I walk in after lunch to the event that I'm speaking at. I said, can I just read the introduction to you guys? And I read the introduction. And I was emotional. And I was like, this is so amazing. Like, thank you for letting me share that. Like, I want to get this to the New York Times. I want to be a New York Times bestseller. And then this guy comes up to me and goes, hey, are you serious about that? I said, yeah. He goes, all right, I'm in marketing. I'm going to make some calls. I'm going to figure out how do you do it. He's like, I'm going to introduce you to this guy, Michael. Tells me a few days later. He introduced me to Michael. I'm like, Michael, I ain't New York Times. He's like, great. I'm like, I want to be your biggest author of all time. He's like, well, my last author sold 90,000 books in his first 2 weeks. His name's Harv Eker. How are you going to do that? I'm like, I want to be a New York Times bestselling author. Like, let's start there. But the fact that I was willing to speak it into existence, I was bold enough to speak into existence, not knowing how I was going to get there. It allowed for other people to be inspired and bring their resources and abilities to my aid. Mm-hmm. And if we just skip the process to safety over fulfillment, that sacrifice becomes the most detrimental regrets in our life.
Oh my gosh.
And that's paycheck to paycheck.
That's paycheck to paycheck.
It's called giving effort.
Yeah.
Not producing. So I have to tell you, dream, and I'm getting like choked up, like literally as you're telling your dream, and I told you about it as we were here. So Wealth Nation, I spoke it to existence that I was going to be at this table because I would always see Wealth Labs, and I would tell myself like, Garrett and I were going to be friends. We're going to be friends. Like totally stalking you, of course. So when we saw you in June, and like you came up to us and was like, hey, good job with your presentation. I was like, oh shit. You know, I was like, Garrett, like, listened. He was like paying attention, and like you had.
I took notes. I thought it was great.
Yeah, you had like amazing stuff to say, and I'm like, oh my God, I think it's happening. You know, you know, just totally willing it. And then like you're like, hey, let's talk about the book stuff, and let's have you at the cabin. And I'm like, oh my God, it's happening. And then like now that we're here, I'm like, it's happening. So yeah. I mean, you just never know what's going to happen when you start like manifesting things, and you actually are intentional, and not just about friendship, right? Like. For me, like I've just learned so much from you for my journey. And I just remember like when we were down and out and we were just like hoping for financial freedom, like you were just always this light that kept coming up in our lives, like your books. We would listen to your audiobooks at the paycheck to paycheck, giving our best effort, right? Mm-hmm. You know, those days, holding on to those benefits. And like you just kept coming into our lives of just like, you can do better. You can do better. Like I always felt like you were talking to me personally, of course, because you were totally.
I want to talk to. I want to know. Like, I don't want to just do a video and there's a certain number of views. I want to know like a connection with the person, right? Yeah. And so I feel like secrets we keep to our dreams, we keep to ourselves are secrets. Dreams we share with others are possibilities, and dreams that we act upon become reality. And so it's. But most people just won't dream big enough because they're afraid they can't get there.
Yeah. Right.
And I get it. Like, you know, I was like, all right, New York Times. And then when I hit it, see, when I went home and told my wife, I want to hit New York Times with this, she's like, of course you're going to hit New York Times. I'm like, babe, like I got 6,000 names in my database. This is my first book I've ever written, self-published. Like, what do you mean, of course? She's like, of course. Like, that's, and then when I hit it, I was like, that's all the dream I had at the time. Mm-hmm. It wasn't a big dream. It's just as big as I could. So I'll say this. I want What Would the Rockefellers Do to be the biggest, most impactful financial book in history.
Mm-hmm. It will be.
So that's what, it's like, that's the declaration I'm willing to make now. Now, what I realize is for that to happen, there's people like you that go, hey, we want to license that book. And now you guys write the forward to the book. And now you have your version of it. And now Wealth Nation gets even more access to that book because we win together.
Right.
And see, when we think that we have to do our dreams on our own, that isolation leads to all of the excuse and all the reasons. We're so reasonable. So reasonable. Yeah, there's reasons. There's reasons. What you've got to be is unreasonable and rational. Mm-hmm. Right? Unreasonable and rational. Like I saw someone the other day said, Elon Musk's not a genius. I mean, he didn't even do this and he didn't do this and he didn't do this. Some of this person. I'm like, no. Like part of the genius is he can help see the best in someone else and bring forward this vision that they can support. And all they would have was talent without direction, without that dream, without that vision. He's like, I want to have my kids be able to go to Mars. That's a pretty big vision.
Just a little bit.
And he just had a rocket that came back and just landed
in parallel park itself.
Are you kidding me? What? Are we bold enough to speak it into existence? Now, here's the thing. Who you speak it to matters.
Oh, spill that tea, Garrett. Go ahead.
If you speak it to someone that thinks that paycheck to paycheck is the answer to security, they become the planters of doubt.
And that grows some weeds, baby.
But if you share with people, like I could share any of my vision with you guys, and you was like, yes, do you know this person? Like, what can we do to support? See, it's who we select to share the vision with does matter. Because some people, well-intentioned and ill-informed, will talk you out of the very thing you were born to do because they don't understand how to do it because they're not you. Within each of us is what I would call a soul purpose. SOUL, values, abilities, passions for the highest context of living. And your soul purpose will seem risky to anyone that doesn't have that soul purpose, which you're the only one with that soul purpose.
Yeah.
Right.
So if you say, I'm going to do this, they can't fathom it. It doesn't mean that it can't be done.
Yeah.
Right.
So paycheck to paycheck is when we circumvent and sacrifice the nature of our soul purpose for security. And what it does is it actually diminishes security because it lowers our light and it drains our energy.
Yes. Oh my. I'm just stuttering. Like, where do we go from here?
Own your own life.
We just close it up with here. Well, and you know what? To that point, Garrett, it's what I recognized is, like you said, when my light is dim, I'm not motivated.
Right.
I'm not passionate. I'm probably a little bitter. I'm probably a victim at some point. And not only does that happen in work, right? Then it wreaks havoc in your personal life, right? Because when aren't you showing up for your spouse? When aren't you showing up for your children?
It's all connected.
Yeah, because it's all connected.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. When your light is dim, there's nothing you can do, personally, professionally, whatever it is.
Because victimhood is the enemy of vision.
Yeah.
Like, even think about some people get motivated to prove someone wrong. That can motivate you, but it leads to bitterness and anger.
Yep.
And it's fed by a feeling of lack or scarcity. I will prove to someone that I can do this because they say I can't do it. Maybe you do, but will you enjoy the process along the way?
Yeah.
See, like, victimhood wants revenge.
Right.
But even if you win in victimhood, you lose. Here's an example. Someone does something that truly is wrong, that is hurtful and harmful. And now, rather than your vision, you're looking in a lawsuit to get back what was yours. and you lose all of the energy and time of building what you set out to build.
Building the vision.
Yeah, I've never sued anyone, and there's been multiple times I'm like, I should sue them, and I'm like, okay, then that's what my life's going to be.
Yeah.
A lawsuit.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I just need to cast a more clear vision. I need to learn the lessons from the situation and choose to be a victor of circumstance versus a victim of circumstance. So paycheck to paycheck, we become a victim of the system,
Right.
instead of a victor of vision. So that's the key. Like, small vision equals paycheck to paycheck.
I
Well,
think that's it.
Yeah, there's a solution. So it's up to you whether or not you want to act on the information that you just received, or do you want to continue the journey that you're currently on. The option is 100% up to you. And the commonality in everybody's problem is you. It's yourself. So until you improve that, then you'll continue getting the same result, which is you are the problem or the opportunity.
Yeah, I was once I don't know what you call it, a mentor, I guess, for this company. I would go once a quarter, and I would speak, and then I would sit at these lunch tables, and people would talk about their situation and do a few one-on-one meetings. And I remember this woman, she sat down, and she had created some sunscreen, which ironically is an organic sunscreen. I bought some, and then I was up on the mountain leading this, like, we called it Wake and Spirit Retreat, and we're up, and I've never been more sunburned in my life. Like, never. If it was like to attract the sun and harm you. But I remember sitting down with her, and the whole meeting was her telling me about everything that she's ever done. She got screwed over, and she was and then she was wanting me to invest in her company. I said, I'm gonna make a better investment than money. I'm just gonna tell you that there's only one common denominator of your entire story. It's you. And you've chosen to look for every reason something couldn't succeed and it was someone else's fault, instead of casting what it would take to be inspiring. And look, people go through horrendous things. People get wrong. Things happen. Like, the world is insane that way. And we can either look at it as those were lessons along the way and what we could learn, or we become bitter and then we stop focusing on what we could do best. And I think if we move to a production economy, a value-based economy, expansion and growth economy, instead of a time and effort economy, all of a sudden we can take responsibility for our results. We can focus more on cash flow along the way. We can find things that are fulfilling to us. And it doesn't mean that it's always going to be like frolicking through the fields and blissfulness and nirvana. What it means is it's just that we can overcome those obstacles because we're resilient enough, because it matters.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's what shapes you. That's what gives you the muscle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I had partners die in a plane crash. I could have chose to be a victim during that time because I erroneously was like, I'll just do whatever I can to preserve their legacy. And for 4 months, gained 20 pounds, didn't ever see my son. My wife was like, you're like checked out. Like, this isn't the man I thought I married. And I could just be a victim of that. Or I was like, oh, I have new information that I can now change my behavior tomorrow. And I did. Or like, I didn't like how it went down, how I sold my company. And I was being a victim about it. I was bitching about it. When I was talking about it, I was like, wait, I'm casting that somehow that was bigger than the value that I can create. And as soon as I let that go, everything got better, right? Because now it was about like, how do I inspire? How do I cast a vision that matters? How can I focus on value creation versus extraction? So, I mean, look, it's easier said than done. But you know what's harder than doing things? Is living in a victimhood story. It's a hard-ass life.
Yeah, it is.
It sucks.
And the people that love you, you're like, oh, it's not your fault. And it's like, yeah. So sometimes it's just the lessons we have to learn along the way.
And I love that what you're talking about too, because we get caught up in like sometimes the little minutia. But I mean, you were just talking about like it happens at every level.
Right.
You sold a business, and still there was opportunity there for you to learn from it. You know, you've had many business encounters. You've wrote books. You've inspired people all over the world, and still, the Garrett Gunderson can be a victim at times, right?
I still I write about abundance versus scarcity. And then for a while, I was like, oh yeah, scarcities can always creep in, but most people aren't aware that it's scarcity.
No.
And I always felt like, oh, it's cool that I can be aware that it's scarcity, because then I can make more informed choices and not be stuck in scarcity.
Totally.
But sometimes when there's higher emotions or more at stake, it's easier to let that scarcity creep in. But we're one moment, one choice, one decision, one word, we're one thing away from getting to a better place.
So we shared a lot on this video today. Tell us how our audience can connect with you and get more information kind of like this one.
They can DM me on Instagram and just put Wealth Nation, and I'll hook them up with one of my audiobooks.
Awesome.
Oh,
Yeah.
I like that. That's what's
Okay.
up.
I'll say one of them because sometimes like my team will be like, hey, what did you promise on this thing?
Yeah.
Don't know.
No,
'Cause I
how
didn't
many
know.
people are going to be DMing you on Instagram?
What's that? Oh yeah, Garrett B. Gunderson. Garrett. B as in boy. Gunderson. SON. So yeah.
Amazing, Wealth Nation. So click on that link, get you your Audible book, right? And keep learning and growing, not only from Wealth Nation, from the amazing Garrett Gunderson. Get as much information as you possibly can so that you can start producing, right? Producing equals cash flow, which equals prosperity. So go get it, Wealth Nation. Remember, you have to take ownership. And if you got anything from today, we want to make sure to remind you to own your own lifestyle.
Or someone else will.